Hello everyone, welcome to CTL's Education Professional Development Series. My name is Stephanie Shea, I'm Marketing Manager here at CTL, and I'm joined by Amy Al-Khalisi, our EdTech Project Manager. If you're not familiar with CTL, we've been headquartered in Portland, Oregon, providing innovative IT solutions to education and government customers for over 26 years. We're a Google for Education partner specializing in rugged CTL Chromebooks, laptops, convertibles, 2-in-1s, and tablets designed specifically for K-12 education. Over the last 2.5 years, we've worked with Google to introduce a line of CTL Chromebooks that have been recommended by PC Magazine as the best choice for Chromebooks in education. As part of our commitment to education, CTL offers free professional development webinars on a variety of topics relevant to K-12 EdTech. Today's webinar is GAFE-ing your way, I don't know if I'm saying that right, through Chromebook-based projects, presented by Danny Kennis, technology coach and Google certified educator and special education social studies teacher. Before we get started, I'll quickly review the attendee interface so you know how to participate in today's event. You should see something that looks like this on your own computer desktop in the upper right corner. You're listening in using your computer speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. You may type any questions into the questions pane of the control panel during the presentation, and they will be addressed in a Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. Now, before I begin, I would like to take a poll and find out how much people know about Google Apps for Education. So, give me a moment. All right, we'll give you a few seconds to answer this, and we'll find out how much everyone has used the Google Apps for Education. We're getting a few more votes in. I'm going to give everyone a few more moments before I close the poll. All righty. Let's share these results. It looks like a nice mix here. 7% no experience, 50% some experience, 29% a lot of experience, and we've got 14% experts. So this should be a good group for coming up with some great questions. Okay. I would now like to introduce Danny Kennis, technology coach and Google certified educator and special education social studies teacher. Danny will share her experience using Google Apps for Education in her classroom and show us some fun Chromebook-based projects that she's created. At this point, I'm going to put up Danny's slides and I will, yes, Danny, are you there?
Hi, Steph. Yeah, I'm here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. And yes, you said it correctly, gaffing your way through student projects.
Excellent.
Okay, so let me just get started and tell you a little bit about me. Steph, you can go to the next slide.
Okay.
I will give my contact information afterwards, but the best way to reach me is Twitter @KennisDanny, like you just saw. So a little bit about me. I teach world history to high school freshmen and sophomores in suburban New York, so I'm about 30 minutes outside of New York City. I'm also a technology coach in my school, and I help to lead different professional development seminars and activities for my colleagues. Outside of school, I go to and present at different education conferences on many different topics, but a lot of them focus on technology in the classroom. So that bottom link that you see there, and you'll be able to click on all of these links once the presentation is put up, and definitely do that because there's a lot of good stuff in here. But that bottom link will bring you to my Chromebook diary that I wrote, which was basically a bunch of blog posts that chronicled my journey from going without devices to basically one-to-one, starting from day one, which I think is important to mention because I didn't always have devices in my classroom, and it was definitely a little bit of an adjustment. Next slide, please. So this is, or was, my classroom last year, room 309. And so at the top it says KenFam South, which was kind of our little hashtag for the year that the students created. And it was originally to get them tweeting or even just conversing, really. And I found that having that class hashtag really helped to build a collaborative climate and culture. And it kind of helped to ignite that initial buy-in among all the students that every teacher really craves, especially at the beginning of the year. So my class is a blended class, and we use high-tech and low-tech. Today we'll be talking about high-tech with Google Apps, but just a little bit about my students. I mentioned I teach special ed, and so the population of my students includes students with learning, emotional, and behavioral disabilities. Some of them have autism and Asperger's. They're sometimes difficult to engage or motivate, but since going one-to-one and using devices, and especially using Google Apps, I've gotten a much higher rate of engagement and motivation, which is always really nice to see. So hopefully you guys will find the same thing if you try out some of these projects yourself. Next slide, please. So if you take a minute to kind of think about what school looked and felt like when you were there, what do you picture? So for me, Steph, you can, I was going to say you can go ahead with the animation. For me, desks were in rows, and the teacher stood at the front of the classroom and taught directly off of an overhead projector. And as a student, you were kind of just expected to be a robot, basically, and take notes without having any time to talk about it or analyze or apply any of it. And it was really rare, if ever, if anyone ever asked what you wanted to learn. What are you interested in what are you interested in, what are you passionate about? And so the pictures on the left kind of show what the education system used to be. Now the pictures on the right, hopefully, are what we are moving towards. And while the pictures on the left might still be reminiscent of an outdated system that some people still have, the right side is kind of just that cultural education that's hopefully being put into action largely because of ed tech. And so flexible seating and group work, passion projects like 20% time, and one-to-one devices in classes hopefully are kind of becoming the norm. And with that comes project-based learning, which is what we're going to talk a little bit about. Next slide, please. So in going one-to-one, I had to restructure a lot of my lesson plans and a lot of the materials that I used to use and incorporate new technology and new tools and different projects and kind of just figure out how to cater to all of the new technology that was in my classroom while also trying to figure out how to cater to a variety of learning disabilities in my classroom. So project-based learning, or PBL as it says in the center there, is a teaching method that uses standards-based content and skills like critical thinking or problem solving and collaboration to allow students to respond to an engaging and complex question or problem or any kind of a challenge. It's largely based on student-driven learning, which is really kind of the big thing here that you're going to see. It's a lot of the students doing things rather than the teacher up in the front of the room being kind of the stage on the stage. And so it's about students finding creative solutions to problems, and it involves finding evidence to support a claim and presenting solutions through a lot of different multimedia approaches. And today we'll focus on using GAFE tools for a project-based learning approach. Next slide, please. So for those of you that are visual learners like I am, on the next slide you'll see that there are two kind of diagrams that just explain a little bit more about project-based learning. And so it's about questioning, planning, research, creating, improving, and presenting on the left side. And on the right side, I think the most important thing, at least for me and for my students, was that orange little bubble that says audience. And When you allow students to create for an authentic audience and tell them that they're going to be creating something for an audience bigger than just you, they light up and they become so excited, and they're just much more likely, I've found, to become invested in their projects, and they understand that other people are seeing it, and so they really kind of take to that. Next slide, please. So I know we have a mix of people here, but just to kind of review for everyone, GAFE is Google Apps for Education, and so that can be a suite of, productivity apps that Google offers for free to schools, and so it includes Gmail, Google Calendar, Drive, Docs, Sites, Draw, Google+, Google Hangout. There's a bunch more things, but those are the main ones that people, that educators and students usually use. So the projects that I'm going to be talking about today will be strictly focused on GAFE tools, which require students to have Google accounts and Google email addresses. There are definitely other sites and other resources that allow you similar functionality, but in my opinion, I found that GAFE tools are efficient, they're easy, and most importantly, for us teachers, they're free, which is always huge. So I'm going to break down each project by the Google app that it corresponds with. So let's go on to the next slide, and we will begin with Google Slides. So as a point of reference, Google Slides is similar to Microsoft PowerPoint. So there are a few projects that I've done with Google Slides, and I kick off the very beginning of the year with the first project that you're looking at right here, which is kind of the ABCs of history. And so I'll give my students a template for an index card, and they basically have to go through and create flashcards for key vocab terms throughout the year. And I give them this template just because I really want them to focus on that point, at the beginning of the year, on getting down the basic skills of how to use Google Slides. Because even though they're coming to me from the middle school, some of them still don't really know how to use the tools the right way, so it kind of allows me to walk them through. But for this project, I ask students to provide a definition and then a visual. So some of them include an image, a video, some of them even choose to use Google Draw to create an image, and they provide that for each term or place, person, or event. And at the end of the project, students end up with a set of 26 flashcards for all the key terms that they're going to need to know from A to Z that they actually use to study for the whole year. They said it was really useful throughout the year, and then at the end of the year when they were studying for finals. So my students chose to use just one index card, kind of like you see there, but others chose to do kind of like the old school where you'd have a word on the front and the definition on the back. So to do that in Google Slides, all you would need to do is just make one index card with the word on one slide, and then what you see there where it says definition here, an image or video, on the other slide. And once you set it to animate, you can kind of go through, and the students are able to kind of quiz themselves that way, which is kind of nice. Next slide, please. The next two are probably my personal favorites. This one, the Create Your Own Adventure, when I first heard about that, my mind was kind of blown, and my kids love this. So when I was younger, for me, my favorite kind of books were the Choose Your Own Adventure books, and I put a little picture of it in there just to kind of remind you guys. But basically, it allows students to create their own Choose Your Own Adventure stories for either historical characters or literary characters, and that's those two subjects, history and English, are what I focused on a lot throughout my presentation because those are the things that I've taught, but you can definitely widen that to include math. Math might be a little difficult, but definitely science or any other subject. But the key here in doing the Choose Your Own Adventure project is learning how to link to another slide within your slides presentation, which is really easy. All you do in Google Slides is go to Insert Link, and rather than inserting a link from another website, you would choose slides from this presentation, and so that allows you to go through and link the different kind of endings or next scenarios. Those two links there are really, really important. So those helped me kind of figure out how I was going to teach this to my students. So the first one that says How To by Karen McConnell, she created that step-by-step guide, and it really allows the students to kind of think outside the box, this whole project, and kind of ask those what-if questions that I had mentioned before we didn't really get to explore, at least for me, when I was in school. So by thinking about those alternate endings and kind of putting themselves in the situation of these historical characters, they really seem to kind of enjoy that. And so the link on the bottom, CYOA, Create Your Own Adventure with Google Forms, I threw that in there because for a lot of these projects, you can actually do them using many other Google apps or many other tools. So I just wanted to show that, you know, there is some flexibility here. Next slide, please. Next, we have a comic strip, which a lot of my students really loved. And this is similar to the Create Your Own Adventure presentation. For me, the planning piece was the most important because it really served as a reminder to the students that the tech tool isn't the focus, but it's really about the learning. So I always have students do a rough sketch of this before on just good old pen and paper so that they can follow their own thought process, and they have to submit that for approval before they can kind of jump in. Once they do get started, they kind of play around with the animation features, the background features, clip art, transitions to create their story. And so everyone's turned out, you know, really differently based on whatever it was that they were doing, an event or a person. But down below there are links on how to get started with this. There's a template that looks like your old school comic strip where there are just kind of 6 squares, or you can do 1 square per slide. And so I think that for my students worked better because it really helped them with the animation a little bit. Next slide, please. So moving on to Google Docs. The next project is called the Hero or Villain Project, or Man of the Year and Most Wanted. So with this, I introduced this on the day that we started learning about a new topic, and we were talking about Julius Caesar. So students were told that they were going to have to decide based on his legacy and achievements whether they thought Caesar was a hero or a villain, and we put a creative spin on it and said, okay, we're going to make Man of the Year or Most Wanted posters. And so these are the templates that we use that you're looking at. And students had to do a lot of research beforehand, and I had them do the research for both sides and turn it in before they decided which side they were going to officially be on and which side they wanted to make a poster for. So using those notes and that research, a lot of them actually ended up not using these templates because they really kind of beefed it up and got a little bit more creative, and it turned into this whole thing where we ended up voting on whose poster was the best, and they stood up in front of the room and they presented them. Some kids even dressed up, so it was this really rich, interactive kind of experience that the kids ended up loving. And then that piece where the authentic audience comes in, I told them I was going to show it to all of my Twitter followers, and so they kind of got a kick out of that. And again, producing for an audience bigger than just me was something that was such a powerful experience for my kids. So I would definitely recommend providing your kids that same experience for any of these projects. Next slide, please. So within this project, one of the coolest parts of Google Docs is that you're able to actually do research within the doc. If you go to Tools and then Research, it shows you right there. You're able to do that. And not only can you find pictures and information, but Docs also allows you to give the citations for these things and provide the footnotes, which is a really important lesson to teach students. So for those of you that are English teachers out there, you can definitely teach them about citations and important things like how to do a citation and why you would do a citation. Next slide, please. So this was another popular one. It's Facebook, but the kids like to call it Fakebook. And you can kind of expand this to be any kind of social media platform, whether it's Instagram or Snapchat or Tumblr. There's a lot. If you do a quick Google search, there's tons and tons of templates out there. But I love this Facebook one because it seems to be kind of a little bit more interactive. And for my students, their favorite part was being able to write on the Facebook wall, and I just put it in air quotes, you guys, but I say wall because they kind of created this dialogue between the historical characters that they chose to represent and then someone else that that person would be talking to. So they also can put information about previous jobs or pictures, any milestone events or birthdays, but those mock conversations which took place on the Facebook wall, definitely hands down their favorite part. Next slide, please. This next project was actually something that my students came up with. So a few of them were really interested in film, and they said, can we make a film about something? And I was like, yeah, what do you want to make a film about? So they said, well, we want to reenact a scene from a war, and I was like, okay, that sounds awesome. And they were like, but we want to do it with a different ending. So using Google Docs, they scripted out an entire kind of scene, and I was able to review that before they actually went and recorded. So there were a lot of different parts of this. Using Google Docs, again, they planned everything out, whether it was an interview or a reenactment or an alternate ending to something that had happened. And so they talked about the different characters they would need, the props they would need, and the kids that were really into film thought that this was an awesome experience. And so after they scripted everything out, Steph, sorry, I don't know if the slide didn't change or if my computer's being slow, but it's still on the fake book slide, I just noticed.
That's interesting. I'm seeing the movie script one. Let me back up. Can you see it now?
I don't see it now, not yet.
I wonder if some other attendee will type in and let me know if they are seeing the Google Docs script.
Okay, yeah, I'll just keep going, but let me know if I should stop.
Okay.
Okay, so with
yes, people are saying they do see the movie script. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. All right, no problem. So again, the movie script project was pretty intense because after they wrote their script, students went out and used their iPhones to record whatever scene they wanted to film. So that was kind of part 2, and then part 3 was uploading it to YouTube. And from that point, a lot of them used the YouTube editor to kind of tweak anything that they wanted to before they actually went and published it. So you can make this project really as simple or as complex as you want, which is the case with all of them. But my students turned this into like this huge thing that actually ended up spanning over the course of the year, where they ended up making kind of a video timeline, I guess, which was pretty awesome. Next slide, please. So moving on to Google Sites. Now, I didn't know a whole lot about Google Sites. I was a little bit intimidated by it, but it's really, really easy to use. And so the most awesome thing I think that my kids did was Shark Tank. So if you've ever seen Shark Tank before, it's basically where people pitch their business ideas. And so my 12th graders, I have them do that project, and they have to try to pitch a product or a company to investors. So in the past, we used Google Slides to do it, but this year the students hosted their entire business plan on Google Sites. And they were able to include images of different logos they created, the YouTube clips of themselves doing elevator pitches. They displayed graphs and different charts on investment information, and it was just like a nice kind of home for everything to be in one place. And so a lot of them hadn't used sites before, so it served as a really powerful learning opportunity for me to kind of teach them about that. Next, we have e-portfolios, which I think is another really important project for any student to do before they graduate high school, or I mean at any age really. But with the e-portfolio, this is really important in teaching students about digital citizenship and really putting their best foot forward in terms of creating a positive online presence. And so for a lot of my students, that's kind of what they got out of it. So that link will bring you to sort of a how-to, and there's a lot of sublinks there that you can check out also. And then lastly is a research paper. So research papers are not exactly the most thrilling thing in the world, and a colleague of mine that had been teaching for about 30 years was looking for a way to spice up this summative research paper that she has students do, and so we decided to try and do it on Google Sites, where they were able to host all their information, including sublinks and images and citations, and the whole process of putting that together was a lot more comprehensive than just writing a paper was, and the students seemed a lot more interested and motivated and excited because this tool was something that was a little bit new and a little bit different from just writing a regular old paper. Next slide, please. So next is Google Draw, and I kind of feel like this is almost the forgotten Google tool sometimes because people don't really know maybe what it does. They don't know how powerful it can be, but the easiest way I can explain this is that it's similar to like old school Paint, basically, where you can insert text and shapes and arrows, lines, and different images, either from your hard drive or from the web to build anything. I mean, you can draw anything you want. You can create a diagram, a graphic organizer, one of the coolest things about this is that you can actually put it into a Google Doc or Sheets or Slides using the web clipboard. So that's really powerful in that you can embed it. So two of my favorite ways of using this was, first of all, I had students basically do what we call the brain dump, where I told them to a picture that we were like taking their brain off of their head, putting it out on the table and spilling it out so that we could sort through everything that was going on in there. And they loved being able to kind of visually show their understanding of a certain topic or event. And for me, it was really cool to be able to see their thought process and kind of correct any misconceptions that they might have about certain things that we had done. Next slide, please. So aside from the brain dump, the next thing that we had done was a timeline. And so the kids really liked that. This kind of helped them to organize their thoughts, and especially in world history, which I teach, there are so many events and people and places and so many little details that really get lost very easily. And so by creating a timeline, they were able to visually understand and show that they understood and display their own conceptions of what had gone on in history. Next slide. So next is Google Forms, which a lot of people don't realize can be used on the student side. I used to only use it on the teacher side, but after giving out review sheets and my students had said, you know, we're kind of sick of this, can we try something new? We started doing, using Google Forms to create review sheets one day. I think when Kahoot wasn't working, which was like their all-time favorite tool ever, but they can create questions that are multiple choice or written response, check boxes, and so really easy to navigate on like the creation side. So that's what you're looking at on the left-hand side there, and on the right side is what it looks like for the users. So after the quiz is created, actually now you have the capability of creating a simple quick grading quiz. I think Google just released that in June. But if you didn't want to use that, you could use an add-on called Flubaroo, which is in Google Sheets. So anytime you make a Google form, the results are saved in Google Sheets. And when you open up Google Sheets, you can see all the information, all the answers to like the quiz in there. And if you use an add-on called Flubaroo, that automatically basically gathers results for data and allows you to grade student work really quickly, like instantly, and give feedback instantly, which is huge and really important, especially that piece of timeliness when students don't understand something. Next slide, please. So then we have Google Classroom, and I like to call this the teacher's treasure chest, because when you were doing PBL, project-based learning, we've talked a lot about projects on the student side, but on the teacher side, it's really important to be able to keep track of everything in terms of grading and giving out work and collecting work. And so for those of you not familiar with Google Classroom, it's basically a paperless blended learning platform that can supplement or potentially even replace the class website. So it makes assigning and collecting, returning, and grading student work almost effortless, especially because you can actually schedule assignments to post on certain days at certain times. You can set deadlines for assignment due dates. You can give feedback really quickly and easily to either individual students or groups of students, and all of that is in Classroom. So I could go on forever about Classroom. I love it. I think it really is invaluable, but it helps me to be really efficient and timely, and it helps me to stay organized when you are doing all of these different projects. Next slide, please. So I know I talked about a lot of different ideas and you might be a little bit overwhelmed, but in terms of where to kind of get started, I just wanted to throw in some links to a few websites that explain a little bit more about project-based learning and how to get started and other projects that you can do. I mean, I've only gone through like such a small amount of projects that you could possibly do, and again, you can use multiple tools with multiple projects, but these are some really awesome resources that you're able to use. I think, though, when you are using or doing project-based learning, again, I mentioned this before, but it's really important to make sure that your lessons are always learning-driven rather than tool-driven, because it's really important that we remember that we have to give students voice and choice in guiding them through that process of choosing whatever the right technology tool might be for whatever the task at hand is. And I think that done right, project-based learning really can help us with that, and it leads to student empowerment and motivation through creativity and, again, producing for that authentic audience. Next slide, please. All right, so we've made it to the end. Thank you guys so much. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions on how to get started or if you have any other ideas for projects. I always love hearing from other teachers and kind of brainstorming together. So the best way to reach me is probably on Twitter at KennisDanny. You can always email me also at dannykennis25@gmail.com, and then my blog is just dannykennis.com.
Oh, that's awesome, Danny, and hopefully you're up for a few questions. We've been getting some coming in during your presentation. There's some really cool projects in there. Thank you for that. We did get a few Chromebook kind of specific questions, and since how long have you been working with Chromebooks in your classroom?
So I've had them for a full year.
Okay, good. Yeah, so you might be able to speak to some of this. I think there's some new teachers maybe who haven't used Chromebooks. We had a question, do Chromebooks work well in a school with Wi-Fi?
Yes, so my school does have Wi-Fi, and we're a BYOD school, and yeah, we use Chromebooks. I wouldn't say every day, but a few times a week, depending on what the task is or what the project is. But yes, they work very well.
Great. Yes, that's what I have also heard. And then just maybe speaking to comparing Chromebooks with another type of laptop, have you used both before, and what are you enjoying about the Chromebook compared to other types of laptops?
So the Chromebook is it's so easy and simple. It makes everything easy because it's integrated directly into your Google account, and so you simply just log in and everything is there. It remembers all of your bookmarks. It is cloud-based, and so you don't have to worry about any USB drives. And it really makes it so easy to share. And for me, I think that's the biggest piece, is that my students are able to share with each other, they're able to share with me, and there's not really a huge learning curve in showing students how to use the Chromebook. I take a few days at the beginning of the school year to show them what all of the keys mean, especially on that top row, because some of those keys are a little bit unfamiliar to them. But once you kind of get past that, it's very easy, and the kids all really love it.
Yeah, it's good to hear that's your experience, because I think that is one of the major benefits, is you can be up and running pretty quickly, and the maintenance is not as intense as if you had all these apps on your computer.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's the other thing, actually, is that there's not a lot of hard drive space, but you don't really need that because you're using Google Apps. So it makes everything, like you said, run very quickly and smoothly.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I appreciate you mentioning that. And then another teacher is wondering about Google Apps for Education. Can you sign up as an individual teacher, or is this schools sign up as a school or as a district?
Yeah, so your school has to be a Google Apps school. I know some schools are Microsoft schools, other schools are Google Apps, but yeah, your school definitely has to sign up for it, but you can use it as an individual. You just won't have access to the Google Apps for Education specifically.
So, okay, so it does have to be for the school.
Yeah.
Okay, so that probably answers their next question, which is, when will Classroom be available for single classroom teachers? I don't know if you know that or not.
So I don't believe, I don't know exactly, but I don't believe that's going to happen. I think that it's based on your domain, and your domain is like your district, and so if your district doesn't have Google Apps, then you probably will not have access to Google Classroom. But something like Schoology is another platform that you could use that's similar to Google Classroom. That's kind of like a learning management system.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's very helpful, yes. Okay, let me check through these questions. How can we access the paper clips example? I'm not sure which one had paper clips on it. Was that in the Word document? I'm going to flip back. I think I know what they're talking about.
Well, everything will be accessible once the presentation is posted, and I'll also tweet out a link to it so that you guys can access and use whatever you want from that.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was looking for the example they were referring to, but I'm not sure where it went. Okay. Yes, that's something, that I will send out a follow-up email to people, and you'll be able to check out all these links because you provided a lot of resources in here, Danny, and I think people will definitely be interested in getting some of these templates and trying these out.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I provided a lot of information, and for me, I don't, everything doesn't absorb the first time. I'm like, I need to sit, I need to play with it a little bit. So yeah, there's templates in there. There are links to other people's blogs. There's directions on how to kind of get started with some of this. So definitely go through, and then if anyone still has questions after that, please feel free to reach out, and I can help you any way that I can.
Okay, that's great. And for some of the teachers, they might not have seen your first presentation where you're talking about kind of how you went about getting the Chromebooks in your classroom, because we have a teacher saying, we're not a GAFE district, the kids don't have email, but you kind of were in that same boat, right? And would you mind talking a little bit about how you were able to get Chromebooks in your classroom?
Yeah, sure. So I think I got really lucky. At the beginning of last year, on the first day, I spoke to my principal and I said, my kids need devices. Like, this is non-negotiable. They need to have devices because they need to be future ready. I need them connecting with people. I need them connecting with each other. I need them producing and creating things. So I spoke to her, and I was on the technology committee in my district, and so other teachers were saying the same thing, and I think it kind of it took a little while to actually get the message across, but she finally got it, and I got very lucky in that I asked, and then a few hours later, not even days, but a few hours later, a cart showed up in my room. I know in a lot of schools they have carts per department, and so if you can even just share with someone, that could work. I know you could use, I guess, like GoFundMe or Pledge Sense to kind of start like a Kickstarter campaign to raise money. And the great thing about Chromebooks also is that they're really not that expensive compared to a lot of other devices. So that's definitely a big win for trying to convince your administrators that you need Chromebooks.
Right, right. Well, yeah, I think your story is really good, and I'll definitely, there's a link to that at the beginning of your presentation if they want to read on your blog
Yes,
how you did
definitely.
that. And so is there a workaround if you're not able to assign emails to the kids, like as far as communicating with them?
So I know this is not going to solve many problems, but the Remind app is one way that I communicate with my students. It's anonymous text messaging basically where I don't see their numbers and they don't see mine, but I can send them reminders, and that's kind of how I give after school extra help sometimes actually, and that the kids that can't come because they have either jobs or play sports or whatever, they're able to text message me. So that's one kind of workaround, but I can't really think of anything else. That's kind of why Google Apps is such a huge win, I guess, for me and for my school. So if I think of anything, I'll definitely let you know, and Steph, maybe you can get in touch with the person who asked the question, but I'm going to think on that because that is a great question.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Yeah, we're getting so many good questions. Thanks everyone for writing in. Here's one. Can you describe the process for designing a learning-driven project?
So I think you have to start with the end in mind. What is the goal? What is the goal that you want your students to achieve? And map it out. Just how you want your kids to map out how they do their projects, map out how you want to assign the projects. Because if the learning goals aren't clear to the students, then you're not going to get the end result that you want. So I think really giving them very clear steps, and that's one thing that I'm careful to do with my students because they have learning disabilities. So not only will I, print it out for them on a piece of paper, I'll put it up on the screen and project it. I'll make sure that I really review everything specifically. Sometimes if I feel like the kids don't understand, I'll have them kind of explain to each other. But I think having benchmarks and like tangible steps, and then the other piece of that is creating a rubric so that students do know what's expected of them. And I didn't talk about that in this presentation at all, but having a rubric so students know what standards they are being held to is really, really important in project-based learning.
Okay, yes, I think hopefully that answers that question. Let's see. I haven't seen anything new come in yet. We still have a little more time. We don't have to use every moment, but some people have planned on an hour if we need it, so I'll see if anyone else writes in.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and then if there's anything that you think that people new to using the Google apps or Chromebooks in the classroom might not even think to ask, like something that came up for you that you had to learn the hard way.
Well, the big thing is just the first 2 weeks of school, which I've been thinking about a lot with school coming up. Really taking the time to build those foundational skills of teaching kids what a Chromebook is and what the keys mean and what Google Docs is, what is Google Slides, what do all the buttons do. So I'm right now trying to think of different projects I can do with them that will teach them the basics of what the tools do while also giving them some knowledge and information. So I think that that's probably, for me, the biggest piece is taking that time to establish those routines. And the other thing is, in terms of your physical space, put your Chromebook cart somewhere that's not going to be in the way, because at the end of the period, the students are going to kind of race to put them away. And so what I found works for me is I created a Google form where students, or actually, let me back up for a second. I numbered each Chromebook and each slot in my Chromebook cart. And so I assigned each student a Chromebook number, and they filled in the Google form with their name and their Chromebook number, so I was able to keep track and hold them accountable. And I printed that form out, and I keep it on top of the Chromebook cart so that I know if, say, number 5 didn't plug in their Chromebook, that's Stephanie's Chromebook, and I have to talk to her tomorrow because she's not doing something the right way. And then if the Chromebook isn't charged for period 4, that student's not going to be able to do their work. So just kind of establishing all of those basic routines, I guess, at the beginning of the year is really important and makes things run a lot more smoothly later in the year. And it takes a lot of time. That was the one thing that surprised me a lot, is it took about 10 minutes at the beginning and end of my class period, and I only have 44 minutes, for my students to correctly shut down and put away the Chromebooks exactly how I wanted it done. So just kind of be patient with it and expect that it's going to take a little while at the beginning, and know that it's okay because it will pay off, later in the school year.
Oh, that's good advice. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So we have another question. Have you used Chromebook managers for your class? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure what a Chromebook manager is. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, this was from Linda. Maybe she'll elaborate. I'm not sure if that means the Chrome management console. I wonder if that...
Yeah, Linda, elaborate so that I can help you.
I'll see if she adds on to it. I'll give her a moment. Maybe we'll come back to that, because we also have a question about using Drive without using email. Like, can you take the pieces of the Google Apps for Education and use them separately?
Yeah, so Google Drive is basically where you store everything. It's like your locker, basically. Like, that's what I tell the students. It's like your locker where you put all your books, and that's where all of your docs and everything is stored. You can definitely use that without using email. You can use all of this without using email, because you're able to share everything, and then once something is shared, it shows up in shared with me. So yes, that's totally independent from email. My students actually didn't have access to email for a few years, which is fine, because we used Google Classroom and that Remind app that I mentioned. So yeah, you can definitely use it independently of anything else.
Okay, great. That's, I thought that to be true, but it's good in case, since someone asked, other people may not know that if they're new to the Google apps. So then, okay, Linda has added students responsible to support and assist. Oh, I see. Wondering, I think she's saying, have you had students who were like the managers who would help and support in the condition of the cart?
Yes. Okay. Actually, wow, that gave me a really great idea. Thanks, Linda. I think what I'm going to do is assign like a Chromebook manager per week or month or something. I had one student that was really awesome about it, and he would stay after school every single day and be like, Mrs. Kennis, let me help you, let me reorganize all this for you. And I was like, you don't have to do that. He's like, no, I really want to, it's okay. But that's a great idea, because it definitely puts ownership in the hands of the students. So I think I am going to do that. So thank you for the idea.
Yeah, that sounds like a wonderful idea because it gives them a sense of responsibility.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, I think,
Hi, Stephanie. This is
yes.
Amy.
Oh, hey.
Great. I have a couple questions, and I see a few. I'm not sure if they were addressed yet. There is a comment that says students can also get free Canvas, an LMS account as well, to get some access.
Yes, so I believe that's an LMS. I'm not too familiar with it, but that is another learning management system.
That's what they use in this area. And also, everybody will get a copy of the presentation with the links to to your email address that you signed up for. And I think there's a question from Andy, and I don't remember anybody asking this, but can you describe the process for designing and learning the Driven project?
Oh, we did that one, I think.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Okay.
the
Okay.
learning-driven project.
Oh, she just labeled it something different. Okay, no worries.
Thank you, though, for catching it, because we did, as Amy is assisting me, there's a whole stack, and some people just had really, comments and things. So yeah, it's helpful to make sure we're catching the questions that people have.
Yeah, I love these questions. This is like my favorite part because I love being able to help people. I know at the beginning when I first got my Chromebooks, I was so overwhelmed and I didn't know where to start, and I was like, this is awesome that I have these, but I don't really know where to go from here or what to do or what I can even do with them. So please keep asking questions, and even after this, reach out and I can help you with anything that you might need help with, even if you just want to talk through something.
That's so nice of you. Yeah. Oh, it looks like Linda has a follow-up. Does every teacher follow the same procedures for Chromebook use and management?
That's a great question. So actually, I am one of 3 or 4 teachers at my school that have a Chromebook cart, and there are a lot of teachers at my school, so not everyone has a cart. I asked, and so again, I got really lucky and I was given one. But at a colleague of mine at his school, what they do is they have a whole training program you have to go through in order to get a Chromebook cart. So that is I guess learning how to manage the physical space of the Chromebooks, but also learning about Google Apps and then learning it for yourself and in terms of how to teach it to your students. So they don't have a rollout program like that at my school, but I think that that's professional development that is definitely, I wouldn't say necessary because I'm doing it without it, but definitely really, really helpful for teachers that are just beginning with Chromebooks.
Okay, that's good to know. Let's see. Okay, so yes, back to without having email. This teacher is saying that you do have to use email to log in to something like Google Docs. So is there a way to share it without their own email?
Okay, I understand. Yes, you do need to log in. So yeah, I guess you do need to have an email address. I was thinking of just using email. But not that I can think of. I can't think of a workaround right now because you do need a Google account to log in to do this. And again, if you use your personal account, you don't have access to the Google Apps for Education suite. So I'm not sure about that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad we cleared that up. And then Linda's sharing something which I could pop this link in the email too. It's www.schrockguide.net/Chromebooks. Have you heard of that one, Danny?
I haven't heard of it. What is that?
She said it's a good research, a Chromebook blog for teachers.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. That's great to know.
Yeah.
Linda, can you tweet at me or email me so that we can connect? I feel like we would have a lot to talk about.
That's awesome.
And Stephanie, do you mind putting the slide up with her information?
Of course. Let's see. It's going to have to go back through some of these. Was that at the beginning, Danny? These are the resources.
It's the first and the last slide.
Okay, so let's see. Here we go. And this will also be when I do our final slide, I will have my contact info as well. But yeah, this is great. Danny's blog has a lot of topics, and she's a guest blogger for CTL, and she just blogged on this very topic that she presented today. So if you check out the CTL blog, you can kind of read more about some of these projects. All right. Kathy Schrock is the author of the schrockguide.net. I'll be curious to check that out.
I'm looking that up right now, actually.
Yeah, I'm very curious to check that out. Yeah, this has been such a good topic. It's clear to me that there's a lot of interest based on these questions and comments that people have been either exploring getting Chromebooks or just getting started with it and with the Google apps.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is definitely an important topic to address. You know, Chromebooks in the classroom, and now that you have them, what do you do with them? So I'm happy to help and happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to scroll one more time, and Amy, let me know too if something jumps out at you. I think we've covered a lot of this.
Yeah, I think we could probably wrap it up.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you so much. I will flip back so you can see our final slide as well with some more information. Here we go. So, yeah, thanks everybody for taking time out of your summer vacation. And thanks, Danny, for your presentation. If there are any other questions, Danny has been generous with her information, and you can also reach me at the email you see in the slide. And you will be getting an email with the presentation, so you can check out those awesome resource links. And I also post a link to view a recording of today's webinar if you want to re-watch it or recommend it for other people to watch. We have a site, ctl.info/webinars. So on behalf of CTL and our presenters, thanks for joining us today, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.